What would you say to a mayor who says a church is not where voting belongs? Hi, I'm Stuart Shepard, and we're here in Rowlett, Texas, coming to you live and in person. I just wanted to show you a bit about this little town. This is on the outskirts of Dallas. It used to be a farming community, and now with the expansion into the suburbs, it's got more than 60,000 people here. See the clock tower on the little roundabout? They've got a nice big green here in the middle of town. I was here last July 4th, and that green was full of people in folding chairs, watching over the horizon for the fireworks to go off, all dressed in red, white, and blue, and the kids running around and playing with their little glow necklaces on. We're here at Freedom Place Church, which First Liberty is representing, and we're going to talk about that today. This building used to be an event center, and they would have plays here and that sort of thing. The church at that time was located on 14 acres on a property some distance from here, but they wanted to retire their debt, so they moved a time or two and then finally ended up in this building. I want to take you inside. I'm going to introduce you to a couple of people here. Hi, guys. I've got Casson Huddleston on my right, who is the pastor here at Freedom Place Church, and I've also got Ryan Gardner on my left, who's an attorney with us at First Liberty Institute. And we're going to talk about why we're here and why First Liberty Institute is involved in this. Casson, first to you, before we get talking about the legal part of this, just tell me about your congregation. How did you get here?
Yeah, so my wife and I started this church in 2003, the first Sunday of 2003. We had pastored in Central Texas for 8 years, and we really felt the Lord tell us to come up here and establish a new work. So that was about 22, 23 years ago, right here in Rowlett.
Now, what's the congregation like? What are the people like who go here?
Oh, we're very, very diverse. We're very, our whole thought process through all of this is more than just the Great Commandment, Great Commission. We really kind of summed it down to we want people to belong, then we want them to believe, and then we want them to behave. That the behaving is later, we leave the Holy Spirit up to that, but really it's a place where people belong. We have a very diverse congregation. We have a lot of people who are on their second, third, fourth, fifth chance. In fact, every Sunday, you've got at least in our congregation, we average about 85, 90 people. Yeah. There's over 110 years of prison time in the house every Sunday. And we have great discipleship ministries, and we call it that we're more than just church on Sundays. For 22 years, we've been involved throughout the community, through the government, through schools, through businesses, through yoking together other pastors. For 15, 17 years, we've had a ministry called Pray Rowlett, bringing 15 to 20 pastors together, praying and being pro-evangelistic through the city, and then, of course, just families. We love families.
Why did you want to be right downtown?
Well, there's a lot of scriptures about where churches should be, and they were always cities. Church of Ephesus, Philippi. Mm-hmm. We kind of lose that in the West, but our whole theme of our life ministry is Jeremiah 29:7. Seek the peace and prosperity of the city which I've called you into. Ask the Lord for it, for when it prospers, you too will prosper. So we always have been a city church, being outside the walls. And when this event center, which was well established, it served the community for many years, the Fulton family did a great job with this vision of making it an event center right in the heart of downtown Rowlett. COVID hit them hard, and we were able to purchase this right after COVID and just walked right in and started serving the community, never missed a beat.
Now, it was Western themed, and you had to change that, but that's a story for another time.
That is a story, yes. The Fultons loved the Western theme. We kind of went more just clean, white, this kind of uptown look. But yes, we love it. It was we love the Fulton family.
Okay, so it makes sense because you're engaged in the community, you're part of the community, you're right here downtown. It makes sense that the county asked for this congregation, this building, to be used as a polling place in the upcoming election. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so in the presidential election, 2016, 2012, every election before that, the big presidential elections and even the ones in between, right across the street at City Hall, there's a small building called the Annex. Yeah. That's where the polling place has been. Now in 2020, COVID hit. There weren't any buildings open except large places that could handle the distancing. And so like the AA Center in Dallas, the only one out here was the large facility. It was actually shut down. No one could go there, but they opened it specifically for early voting. Yeah. And they used that. But what happened in 2023, the city following standard procedure. It was going to be this site, but they said to the Dallas County Elections, well, you can do early voting, but we were not going to serve it day of. So that was a change. Well, they like to bring, harmony, where early voting is. It's also day of, and of course there's multiple places on the day of election around the city.
Mm-hmm.
So they told them they wouldn't. The Dallas Elections sent me an email, said, hey, this is what's happened. Would y'all be willing? You're right across the street. Would you be willing to do all of it? But we need all, early voting and day of. We said, sure. So in 2023, after they asked us, the county, we agreed, went through their vetting process. They came and toured our facility, and we were approved for actually November 23 election.
Yeah.
But what happened in that general election, there was a special election called by the city, laid on top of that same election. And when the mayor found out, this is all on the city website, it was very, very open. Elections should not be at churches. And he had our contract pulled from the Dallas County, though we were approved. And we were just like, okay, it's what they want to do, that's fine. We went on serving the city.
Yeah.
In 2024, early this spring, got another email. Would you be interested? Again, we said, sure, we would love to. They came and vetted our property. They did also look at the RCC where they had held it. And Dallas County Election chose our place for the elections 2 years in a row. And everything was fine till it was released publicly. And then, again, the mayor went on the news and went everywhere, never saying, though, that it was about not being at a church, but there was a parking issue, there was safety, or just parking really was, and it wouldn't serve the community. But however, on record, through the emails, through the tapes from the city council meetings, through the town hall meeting, that I talked to him straightforward and said that, 38% of the election sites in the 23 election were churches. The largest turnout for decades of voting centers was our Redeemer Church on Park in 75.
Yeah.
And even our own commissioner, John Wiley Price's church, Friendship West, many churches. But again, he was adamant on video and in emails, voting centers do not belong at a church as long as he's the mayor of Rowlett.
And then it got a little ugly because it became about more than voting. The mayor threatened to pull the document that lets you occupy this building, which would effectively shut the church down.
Yeah, so through the mayor's attempts and other people to try to get the commissioners to cancel the contract, move it, which they couldn't. In Texas, counties run the elections. It's not ran by above, like on the state level. It is legislated, but then once that legislation is determined, counties run it.
Mm-hmm.
And cities don't run elections, but they kept trying. When they realized they could not cancel the contract, then on Monday, the last day of September at 6 p.m., got a phone call from the city manager. I was home. He said, Reverend, I need to bring you a letter over to your property. I said, well, it's 6 o'clock, Mr. Hall. I'm not there. Well, I can see people that are there. And I said, well, I don't know who's there, because he's just looking out the window.
Yeah.
And I said, but I'm not there. He said, well, I just need to get it in the building. And I said, well, what is this letter? He said, well, Reverend, your certificate of occupancy, we discovered that it was issued in error. There was a couple of steps that our staff missed, and the letter says you have 10 days to get that corrected or we can shut your property down. I said, now, Mr. Hall, tell me one more time, do I have a CO? He said, yes, you do.
Meaning certificate of occupancy. Yeah.
And we've been inspected. Everything is up to par. He said, yes, you do. However, it was issued in error. We are, and my word would be, retracting it. You have 10 days to get a plat and to have meetings with the city, which could not happen in 10 days. I said, This is not good what you're doing. I believe this is politically motivated. He said, well, it's not. I'm just doing what I have to do. I said, well.
It certainly feels like hardball.
It really does, because he assured me on the phone that, well, we'll handle this. It's the city's fault. You just go through the steps and it'll be fine. I said, because, what people will say is we've done something wrong. All we did was say yes to the county 2 years in a row. All we did is serve our community for 23 years now, giving of ourselves to them. It's going to look like we've done something wrong. I said, no, we'll keep it together. Well, 9 a.m. the next morning, our own city councilwoman, Elisa Bowers, and a number of the community people from the city appeared before the county commissioner's court and told them, well, we have new information. And they shared that we don't have a CO and from that point, that's when I realized I need help, and we were able to connect with First Liberty.
And that's when it became clear that legal assistance was needed, as you just mentioned, and they got in touch with us at First Liberty Institute. That's where Ryan Gardner enters the story. Ryan, first, why is it legally okay in Texas for people to vote to cast a ballot inside a church building?
Well, it's legally okay not just in Texas, but across the entire United States. A church building is just like any others, and a church may feel called to care for its community, and one way to serve the community is to serve as a voting site just like this. I think, as Pastor Huddleston referred to, if you look on the county website, there are dozens of locations this election, so happening next week, they're going to be serving as early voting sites and on election day. And expand, that's just one county in Texas. Expand this across the entire United States. You're talking about thousands and thousands of churches that are serving the community in the very way that Freedom Place Church is trying to serve the community here. And if you go back, not just from modern practice, but back to the founding all the way to now, this is something that is deeply rooted in our nation's history. Churches being the sort of community centers, being a place where people come to vote. So it is absolutely legal for the church to do this.
And full disclosure, I'm from Kentucky, and I voted at a church at my precinct there. It was a common thing, never thought twice about it. You just go in the basement, cast your ballot, off you go, because at that point, it's just a building that's part of the community that's helping out. And that's something we've really been talking to churches about this election cycle in particular, is the rights that churches have to participate, to engage in, and to be involved in civic engagement when it comes to elections. What are some of the things that churches can do during an election season?
Well, churches have the same free speech rights as any others. The churches can educate their congregation. Churches can express their religious views on issues that are important to their faith that might overlay with politics. I mean, a lot of religions across the country, I mean, are inherently political in some ways. Christianity certainly is, and so churches should not be shy about that or fear some sort of repercussion because they are engaging in protected First Amendment activity as dictated by their own consciences.
Yeah. You can register people to vote. You can hand out nonpartisan voter guides.
All of those things, absolutely.
Yeah, very good. Why is the church right here and the mayor wrong on this particular issue? I mean, you've kind of already built that case, but let's just spell it out.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, the mayor needs a history lesson on how long churches have been serving as polling sites. But beyond that, what's really wrong here is targeting a church for disparate treatment because you don't agree with something the church is doing. And here, the mayor doesn't agree with the church serving as a polling site based on his own prejudices. That is absolutely wrong to do. And he said that not just this church, but any church, purely because it's a church, should be ineligible to serve as a voting site.
Which is just wrong.
That is discrimination based upon religious status, which is something the Supreme Court has repeatedly held to be odious to the Constitution and in violation of our fundamental rights.
What has First Liberty done so far with this case?
Well, when we became aware of this situation, we sent out a letter to the city to inform them of the law. And one aspect of the law here that's important is we've talked about the First Amendment aspect of this, but there's also special protections under Texas law that I think are really important in this case. I think that we all remember in 2020 when churches were getting shut down across the country, that was a huge issue, and First Liberty had some amazing victories in pushing back against that.
Yeah.
Well, one of the byproducts of that after we got out of COVID is the state of Texas passed both a constitutional amendment and statutory protections to tell the government that you cannot shut down churches ever again, be it for public health official reasons or any other reason. You can't do it. And that's what would have happened if the city had succeeded in pulling that certificate of occupancy. The effect would have been to have shut down this church, not just as a voting site, but for all religious activities as a whole. And so the city was wrong both to target it for the voting site and for threatening to shut down this church and prevent it from engaging in religious exercise.
Will people be coming through those doors and voting here on Election Day?
Absolutely. Before Election Day, I think early voting starts next Monday, if I'm not mistaken. And so come Monday next week, Freedom Place is going to be open and is going to be ready to serve its community.
All right. Legally, what happens next? Where does this lead?
Well, we've sent the letter and we've been in contact with the city and we're going to continue those conversations. And our hope is that the city just does the right thing here and allows Freedom Place to simply bless its community, because that's all this church wants to do. That's all churches across the country want to do is to simply serve their communities and bless them and make these places a better place to live.
All right. Well, Ryan, thank you for the work that you're doing to represent the church in this, because it's so important. Pastor, it's not lost on me that the name of your congregation that's on the screen behind you is Freedom Place.
Yes, sir.
And yet you're in the middle of this fight.
It truly is. What we understand is most churches just talk about spiritual freedom, which is the most important. But there are religious freedoms. There are physical freedoms, freedom from addiction. And none of those are any different than us fighting for this freedom to do what's right in our community. Our founding forefathers, a lot of those were pastors and ordained ministers.
Mm-hmm.
The Muhlenbergers brothers are my favorite. And, one brother who was pastor in New York was upset at his brother, John, down in the more center of the colonies, and said, you shouldn't be involved in politics and shouldn't be involved in the pulpit and anything. And his brother, abstained against that. Yet, when the British forced the New York pastor out of his building and forced him to watch it burn to the ground, he then became involved. And I believe he was one of the first speakers of the House or the Congress there, and got very involved. This is our foundation. And as Ryan said, not only does the mayor, but all of us need to revisit history. And we need to understand what that is, and for ourselves. Someone asked me the other day, is this a new thing, churches being involved in their communities and in establishing Christians as leaders? Because I really believe that. If we would do that, we could have Christian leaders serving our community from the dog catcher all the way to the White House. But he said, is this new? I said, no, it's not new. It is actually returned to our history. This is what our country was founded on, and really what gave us the Constitution that we live by, which is the longest standing government document ever. And I don't ever want to impeach that.
Well, we are proud of you for taking a stand and honored as an organization to stand with you in this. And we'll keep you updated on firstliberty.org and firstlibertylive.com as this progresses. At this point, people are going to be voting here, and we're very happy to announce that. First Liberty is fighting for what matters most.